Picture this: design, construction, and maintenance are working hand in hand in real time throughout the entire project lifecycle. Communication is flowing between all necessary parties, keeping the project running on time and reducing cost. Welcome to Bridging the Gap with Applied Software. I'm your host, Todd Wyant. This is the show where we empower you to transform industries by championing innovation. Please feel free to interact with us by liking or commenting on this video. We'd love to hear from you. Today we are excited to be joined by Christopher Riddell, one of our senior solutions specialists and a Bluebeam certified consultant. He's also the host of our podcast and webinar series, the AEC Disruptors. Welcome to the show, Christopher.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you start by just giving us a little bit more on your background?
Yeah, so I have education in architecture and building construction, and I worked in an AE firm for about 7 years.
Okay.
At that firm, I actually used Bluebeam quite a bit. But what was interesting is when I became a consultant, certified consultant, I was blown away by what little I knew and what I thought I knew I wasn't using to its full capacity. So it was a great learning curve to see what it could offer.
Yeah, very nice. So how does Bluebeam allow design, construction, and maintenance to work better together throughout the project lifecycle?
So it depends on how we want to look at it. If we want to look at it just from an architecture perspective first, there's a lot of tools that are now offered that we can internally work together more collaboratively. Okay. We can do markups where we can assign responsibilities. We can, if the contractor is using it, they could do things like quantity takeoffs. But as a team whole, what we really see the power for collaboration and coordination is going to be when we get into Bluebeam Studio. Studio is going to be broken down into two different parts. There's a project and a sessions, but within that we have cloud storage in which we can work with our entire teams across the life cycle of the project. We can invite them all in and we can see what each person is working on at whatever time and state we are at.
Gotcha. Interesting. So Bluebeam Review, you mentioned about the markup capabilities. Review has the advanced markup and collaboration capabilities. How do these help to increase communication for the architect?
Architects, it's huge, and where it's really important is on the design review side. But in general, where I used to work, we would redline our drawings by hand. Someone would redline them out. We would scan those back in after those markups have been picked up. And the only way we could identify who picked up what markup was I gave you a green highlighter and I had a red one or a yellow one. And I had to hope that when you highlighted it, you did it. And there would be instances where you highlighted it and that, yes, I took care of this. And come to find out, we print it and we send it off and you never did it. You just highlighted it. So we can avoid all of that now using something like Bluebeam. One, I can mark up right in the system. I don't have to scan my drawings in anymore. It's all right there, but I can assign responsibilities now. So I can now say, hey Todd, you are responsible for this markup, and I can check that when you've done it, when you've completed it, when it's been taken care of. So there's more accountability there and not just the, oh yeah, I did it, and we're relying on highlighter colors.
Right.
So I can now actually use the power of a Bluebeam to keep track of that responsibility. And then when we get into design reviews, we have the same amount of things that we can do during that process as well.
Gotcha. So that sounds like a huge upgrade from the old way of doing things.
I mean, it's so much better because think, one, I had to print it, so we're wasting all that. I had to go through and make my markups. Then I had to scan it in when we were done, and I was relying on you just to do it. Now we have more of a digital copy that we don't have to go through that scanning process. We're not wasting money for printing, and anyone anywhere can access it versus if you don't have the set with you. And how many times would we see you would print a set, I'd print a set, we'd redline something else, and there was no way of getting that information together.
Right.
And now in Bluebeam, we could do that. You could take a PDF and mark it up on your own. I could take it on my own, but we can now import all those together and have one composite set. So it is a much more streamlined process than what we're used to going through.
Yeah, that's great. One of the issues that causes costs to go up is not getting design feedback in time. How can Bluebeam Review help to kind of speed up the design reviews?
It's pretty powerful because there are things we could do, and it kind of goes back to when I mentioned there's a thing called sessions. There's different applications for sessions. One, think of it as a live real-time collaboration setting. So we pulled out a table in here, we rolled out a set of drawings, and you had a set of color markup tools and I had one. And we just went at it all day. We marked it up. We could do that in sessions, and where there's the power is that I'm not relying on you, having to wait on you to get to it or wait on me to get to it. you can be anywhere. So we don't have to be in the same office. We don't have to be even in the same state. So how does that make everything go faster? Well, we can now get more real-time information quicker. We can get on the phone. I can even follow you on the markups. I can see where your cursor is.
Oh, wow.
So we could do all of these design reviews, and then we can track back using things like responsibility to assign, okay, who's in charge of this? With that project or with that sessions, if we want, we could open it up to inviting the contractor. If we want to get their input early on, we could invite multiple parties to that session. We can work through it, we can mark stuff up, we can talk through it, and inevitably it's going to help with the design review process and the design review cost, because we can sort of pull that back down to a much more manageable time period. We can even assign dates to it. We could say that at Friday it expires, and if your comments aren't in it, you forfeit it.
Oh, wow.
Well, now what's happening is we don't have an owner that says, sends me an email with one change or something else, and then, oh, I told you I wanted to do this. We have it all in a place where we can hold everyone, including an owner, accountable and say, no, we never actually decided on that because it wasn't in our markup session that we went through.
Right.
We have a record, we have a log, we can have a chat, we could have all of that, and we could pull that aside, use that. And so when they say, well, I told you to add extra door here, no, you didn't, because together we all worked on this in the same session, and we have record of that never happening. So it's accountability across the board.
Yeah, that's great. Within Bluebeam, you can create, markup, collaborate, organize, like you were mentioning. Can you walk us through some of the real world examples of kind of the power and scope of this in play?
So there's different applications. So say we've sort of touched on the architecture side and being able to do those design reviews. I mean, there are connections with Bluebeam to other things like BIM 360 and other softwares, even Revit, where we're able to help and utilize Bluebeam from the architecture perspective. On the construction side, where I see the most power in real world examples is how we use quantity takeoffs. So we're able to use Excel and the combination of Excel and Bluebeam and hook them together. And I've seen some very lengthy, robust templates that these contractors are using for their cost estimating. So you have a really good spreadsheet template. You connect it to any Bluebeam PDF you want, and every time you put down a measurement tool, whether it's area or length or something, so you're doing flooring or you're doing linear feet of millwork or whatever it is, we can track all that real live time. So all I have to do once I get that link set up is I just work in Bluebeam. It updates my quantities, and so that's, of all of them, that's one of the biggest real world uses is in quantity takeoffs. So I would say between those two, how we use it from one from the design model, how we even extract information out of that, we're able to do that with Bluebeam, how we collaborate in those sessions, and then how contractors use it for cost estimating. Those would be the big three.
Interesting, very cool. What are some trends that you're seeing around Bluebeam recently?
The quantity takeoff is one.
Okay.
That's a huge one that people keep pushing so that they can I went to an event, we were in Dallas, we were doing a Bluebeam event, and I was talking to a guy, and he has a huge touch screen, and he said he's got his tool set up where he can just click wherever he wants, and he can very quickly, whether it's for studs or whatever dimension, he can almost instantaneously get quantity takeoffs. So that is a huge trend. The other huge trend is with Bluebeam Studio. They're evolving that. There's even Studio Prime now, where we have further integrations to other type softwares. The reason I think everyone's really gravitating towards that is they love that idea of having unlimited cloud storage and being able to work collaboratively no matter where we are at the same time.
Sure.
So we can create a project in Studio, projects. We can have our project folders. We can have all our project files. We could go through and check in, check out documents, mark them up. Or at any point we could say, hey, let's have a real lifetime collaboration session. Let's get in, let's do one of these, we'll make our markups, and then we can end it and send it back. So between the studio projects, the studio sessions, and then the cost estimating, that is where Bluebeam's getting pushed in the most.
Gotcha. What are some of your go-to kind of tips and tricks to increase productivity using Bluebeam?
Markups list would be, I would say, absolute most important thing to understand how it works. When I made the comment before that if we were doing it by hand, I couldn't keep track of what anyone was doing or whatnot. I recently talked to a client that they were manually having to input a lot of this information into an Excel document just to keep track of what comments were made. The markups list, being able to utilize that, understand how it works, and also understand how you can manipulate or customize it with customizable columns, will allow you to do a level of quantity takeoffs. You can create formulas, but what you can pull out of that and what you can pull into Excel is amazing. You can track every time someone put a markup down, who did it, the length of it, the width of it. You could sort it however you want. You could filter it. I mean, understanding how to use the markups list would be the absolute one thing that I'd say if you're using Bluebeam, you need to really understand that. And then when it comes to productivity, the last thing I would say is utilizing the tool sets. We're able to create markups, and if I'm always using a measuring tool every single time, I can put that in a place that every time I use it, I can standardize the way it looks. I can share it with my team. No one has to recreate and think about that. So if you're not using tool sets the way it's supposed to be used, you're already missing out because you're already doing more work than you should be doing. And then if you don't understand how to use the markups list, you need to get into it because there's so much power in what's actually being tracked that it's quite amazing.
Yeah, very cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All the information on Bluebeam. Really appreciate it. And thank you to those watching. If you've liked what you heard from Christopher today, you can get more of it. Check out his podcast, the AEC Disruptors, in the link below. Also, if you're going to XCon August 27th through 28th, 2 of our experts will be leading a couple sessions on new forma and review for civil site designers and contractors. You won't want to miss those. If you're interested in learning more about Bluebeam or any of our other products or services, you can visit ASTI.com. Until next time, I'm your host, Todd Wyant, thanking you for joining us on Bridging the Gap with Applied Software. Keep innovating.